Hey everybody, this is Perch, and over the weekend, Stephanie Phillips, who's the writer for Harley Quinn, took to Twitter to basically call out a review for Harley Quinn number 12, basically calling out the reviewer for doing personal attacks. And this seemed to spiral into a number of creators kind of commenting on this. Pete Woods did, Cully Hammer, Dave Johnson, Ron Mars, a number of people kind of chimed in on this, talking about how this is over the top and bad. So for the record, for what it's worth, I do think reviews of comics should steer out of the terrain of personal attacks. But I wanted to read the review and I wanted to read the comic. That's what I do. I'm like, okay, well, seems to get everybody stirred up. So it must have been a very egregious comic. It must have been a very egregious interview. It must have been a very, very angry, over the top interview. It must be a very just completely abnormal sideways comic. And the reality is, I've now read the comic. We can talk a little bit about that. I've read the review. We can talk about that. And neither the comic nor the review is particularly out of the ordinary, which often leaves me kind of scratching my head as to how did we get here? And when creators come online and say things like this, and Stephanie Phillips wrote, from a review for Harley number 12, quote, Harley 12 is a middle finger from the creators to the readers in every way that matters. Now, what's interesting about that is, having now gone and read the review and read the various things that Stephanie Phillips said, that was not the line that clearly irritated her. And I'll get to what that line was in a moment. Here's the point in the video where I'm saying her. Am I now misgendering the creator? I should look at these things ahead. Apparently not. Okay, good. Harsh reviews are fine, says Stephanie. They come with the territory, but when a reviewer crosses the line to personal attacks, I'm going to speak up. And then she talks about, if you don't like series, that's fine. Maybe it's not for you. And then here's the catch. This is really the crux of everything else. Yeah, the rest of all the feedback all over the place is kind of window dressing. It's, if you don't presume that I or the rest of the creative team didn't put every ounce of effort into our work. It's presumptuous, it's offensive, and it's absolutely wrong. And then talks about how this happened a few months ago. What's wrong with the reviewer has an axe to grind, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then here's another kind of, this is the moment. I don't know why this reviewer has an axe to grind. I don't want to drive traffic to their site. They have me blocked for unknown reasons since I've never interacted with them, which frankly seems like a good indication that the review is not solely about the work. I mean, if we're going to throw rocks at blocking somebody without ever talking to them, I mean, come on, like really? I don't know. In the world of comics, nobody should be talking about that like some kind of surprising statement. The amount of people who block each other, either through blockchains or other business, has nothing. I mean, you could try and make that personal if you want, and if you do, then I think there's got to be some people who need to answer it within the comic creator side. So I wouldn't personally be bringing that up. Anyway, but like I said, the thing that really seemed to trouble Stephanie and then troubled others, I'm assuming, although it really very quickly people throw out trolls and then also throw out that, hey, as comic creators, we don't make a lot of money. We don't deserve this kind of stuff. I mean, again, for what it's worth, reviewers are making less than the comic creators. Reviewers are most likely making zero. Most reviewers are paid in free comps of comics, if that. So, I like, if we're going to throw money into this thing, I think we're all racing to the bottom pretty quickly. But like I said, the part of clearly the review that irritated Stephanie was this suggestion that the creative team didn't put in the effort. Okay. So now we get to the actual review, which came out last week, and this is the line. And I don't know why they didn't quote this part in the tweet. It would have made a lot of sense. The middle finger to the fans. I mean, I don't. That clearly doesn't mean much. It's this line. Harley Quinn number 12 is what happens when the creators stop giving I'm assuming shit, about their creation and demonstrate in word and deed that nothing they're doing has to make sense, so they're doing it anyway. You'll struggle to find any comic on the market where the creators give readers the print equivalent of a shrug and an apathetic whatever. And then the reviewer kind of goes through and explains somewhat of why that Harley Quinn's trapped on a train, and the train has a bomb on it, and it's racing toward Kevin. And how does she save the day? She doesn't. She kind of just smashes her foot, or smashes a handcuff, jumps off the train, it explodes. And the problem is solved magically, impossibly, with no rhyme, reason, or explanation. As I said, whatever, it doesn't matter. All right, so now is the case where I go to the actual comic and I read it, because I'm curious, is that accurate? So Harley Quinn number 12, again, by Stephanie Phillips, art by Riley Rossmo. And Riley, just throwing it out there, is definitely an acquired taste to some extent. I think there are people who like Riley. There are people who can't stand Riley. I mean, it's a little bit, your mileage may vary. It's a very, very stylized artwork, not unlike Michael Mignola back in the day, and how people either loved or hated that artwork. So Riley is doing this work, classic kind of Riley. I run hot and cold for what it's worth on the art. Sometimes it's very dynamic, it's different, I like it. Other times, what gets me, and this is my own personal bias about any comics, is when the faces of the characters and kind of the general body proportions and everything just wildly vary from person to person, where it's completely changed. And this happens in this book with a number of the different characters, almost to the point that you stop, unless they had the clothes on, unless they had an outfit that allowed you to tell who was who, you start to get pretty, not confused, just all starts to mush together. When Riley is doing kind of very stylized material, like the villain here, Keepsake, has a very distinctive look and feel. It works. It's dynamic. It's exciting. And it fits really well. Some of the kind of background characters, supporting characters, all start to blend together. Anyway, this comic, in my view, it's not egregiously terrible. I don't know. What the problem is. Is the person working hard or not is subjective. I mean, unfortunately, in comics right now, you do feel like there's a certain level of apathy, and I'm talking about it in general. And it's not necessarily the comic itself. It's when you get to say the solicitations for the comic, and the solicitations is like, we don't know what this issue is about, but you're going to love it. Buy it anyway. It's hard not to read that stuff and go, the person who's doing this clearly doesn't care. When you see really basic typos in a comic or on the cover, it's, granted, there are people who are working hard. I remember, if you watch that Disney Plus documentary where, was it Christos Gage was desperately trying to write parts of Iron Man while Dan Slott was kind of yucking it up. And the writer, or the artist and letterer, was getting stuff the last possible second during the holidays, and it was a tight timeline and painful. And clearly those people are busting their ass to get something out. In this comic, clearly people, from the colorist and others, are trying to put stuff together. Where the writing is concerned, to me, it's less that it's not that the Stephanie here doesn't care about any of it. It's that this book kind of goes, from page to page to page. I mean, unfortunately, this is going to wind up sounding like a much harsher review. It doesn't feel like it really matters. It also feels like it's very forgettable. It feels like if you were trying to remember what happened during this arc, like a year from now, you couldn't do it. Go 5 years, 10 years, no, it's going to vanish. And this is not a 2022 only phenomenon. You saw this. I was just looking at some Nightwing back when he was dating / getting raped by Tarantula, and that whole storyline. And there's comics in there that just have no point or meaning, and they're very forgettable. I'm sure you have had it before, where you read a comic that you haven't read in like 15 years, and you're like, oh, I'd completely forgotten this. A lot of comics do kind of feel like that. Does that mean that nobody cares? I mean, I don't know. It's tough. I think the whole, I'm still puzzled as to why this particular review got everybody worked up. I don't get it. It's for a relatively small site, Weird Science DC Comics. this site is not getting thousands and thousands and thousands of hits. So I this is somebody basically saying, I didn't like the comic. It didn't matter. Nothing makes sense. There's no stakes. There's no point to the story. And it's 100% clear nobody at DC Comics cares about what's going on with this title or this character. I don't know what DC Comics cares or doesn't care about, for sure. It's hard to say. In general, I think, DC Comics has that vibe to it. Not the comics themselves necessarily, but the company has this per se. It's giving off this feel like a lot of people in charge just don't particularly care what's going on. The management. And again, I say that my examples of this are, solicitations that are just poorly written to gone, or cases where you pick up the comics and they're delayed, or they spoil later issues in the events by accident, like what Marvel recently did with Devil's Reign. Or they send the message of like, hey, we've got this huge storyline in the Justice League. Everybody's going to die, but then they're going to get resurrected. It'll be fine. And when you see that stuff, you can't not think somebody in that company, in the marketing department, in the management, somebody there is just going through the motions. That's how it comes across. I'm sure that's painful, and that's clearly triggered a number of creators here who do not like to hear that. But these are the reasons why it feels that way. This particular issue, to me, the parts that feel like they don't matter, the parts that feel like you're going to easily be able to forget about this months from now, and there is a lot of Deus Machina kind of stuff in here, where character, how suddenly Solomon Grundy appears at the last second, and suddenly, the bomb train happens to explode at the right minute. There's a lot of that kind of stuff, and it does pile up to make you feel like, hey, there is some good character work, which, really, I think the reviewer even talks about Kevin. The character is actually making some progress. Maybe I'm wrong about this. I thought I read that. Maybe no. Now I'm looking at it. I didn't. Maybe I saw this in a different interview or a different review. I don't know. There's character. No. He says there's no character growth except Kevin, of course, and it's true. So Kevin does have some good character growth in this series. Harley is kind of doing Harley stuff. I don't know. In terms of the output of the story, it doesn't feel like it terribly matters. I'm sure the creative team is working hard. I'm sure people are working to put this thing out. I don't think it's like, and I know some of you are absolutely going to disagree with this. I don't believe there's a comic creator, writer, artist, letterer, editor, maybe the editor. Because again, well, let's forget the editor for a minute. We'll just talk about the creative team of the comic. I don't think anybody's sitting there going, let's just do the least amount of work and F it. I hate the fans anyway. Cram this stuff out. I don't think anybody's consciously saying that. I think there are problems that occur. And why I took the editor back off the table is there are editors, including editors at DC, who openly tweet about how they hate their job. They don't really care about it. They won't answer mails. The next person who messages them, they're just going to block them because they're too tired. They're drunk and stoned. The editors, DC editors are writing that and putting that out in public. And when they do that, yeah, it gives the impression nobody cares. It absolutely does. So, it's not, I'm sure it's not nice if you're on the creative team to have somebody say, this work makes it look like nobody is caring at all about this. I don't know if that's a personal attack, but I get it. I get you. You take that stuff personally because you work hard on something or you care about it. I get how it's tough, but there are, very concrete reasons why the company gives off this impression. There are. We may not like it, but look, when Chris Conroy is saying things like, I don't want to do my job. I hate answering emails. I'm just going to eat all this pizza and get stoned. And he's posting this publicly to everyone. Or, the part of my job I hate the most is having to answer mail. Like, when you're writing that and putting that out in public, maybe it's like, ha ha ha, funny joke, but you have to acknowledge that people are going to read that and wonder if you are invested in your job. I don't think that's the craziest thing for them to wonder. So, I don't know. What makes up a personal attack? This interview, I don't know. I struggle to see how it's a personal attack. Do I see it? Do I think it's hard to read? Sure. Do I think it probably hurts somebody's feelings if they are told you don't care about the job you're doing? I'm sure that does hit personally home. I just I don't think this stuff is coming completely out of the blue, and I think if you take a bigger picture look at things, then some of this stuff just might be revealed. Anyway, I don't know. I tried to look at this as fair and as balanced as I could on all the sides. It feels like a lot about nothing. I still can't quite understand why everybody got worked up over this one, because right now I could easily click on 50 other reviews that are way harsher and go into the person's skin color, their religion, their all like really personal stuff. This one, I don't know. Apathy kind of sucks, I suppose. But there you go. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below, and thanks for listening.